What's up, everybody? Brothers, sisters, psychonauts, and seekers of truth. It is Ananka, and welcome to my bazaar. Today, I have an Ayahuasca chirp report for you. The title of this chirp report is Ampitheatre of Eternity, and was submitted to Erowid in 2016 by the user Logos. With all that being said, let our story begin. Prior to this experience, I had one attempt at taking ayahuasca, composed of bee caapi plus chacruna, boiled for 2 hours at equal ratios, around 60 grams. That attempt ended prior to initiation of a psychedelic experience. I ingested the bee caapi tea concomitant to the chacruna tea, and vomited everything back up within 20 minutes of ingestion. Determined not to have a repeat of my initial attempt, I purchased Acacia confusa powdered root bark and Syrian rue seeds. I followed the guide to brewing Asian ayahuasca that I found online with the following modifications. Number 1. Quartered navel oranges were used in place of kiwis for providing citric acid to the acacia tea. Number 2. I didn't prepare a tea of the Syrian rue whatsoever. More detail later on how I ingested the Syrian rue. Number 3. Alkaline water was not used, just tap water filtered through a carbon filter. Number 4. No shamanic peripherals were included, though I did light candles for the duration of the experience and blessed the kitchen prior to initiation of the brewing. And number 5, a coffee maker with 2 coffee filters was utilized for the final filtration of the acacia tea, prior to concentration. I weighed out 15 grams of the root bark on a digital scale and added 1 liter of the water, then followed the recipe and orange infusions accordingly, keeping the water level more or less constant for the first 6 hours of cooking. And in the final 2 hours, I let the water level reduce on its own. The heat on the stove was always kept at bare minimum, only enough to effect a light boil. At the 8-hour mark, I filtered the entire tea mixture through a double-layered coffee filter, and finally added 100 milliliters of filtered water through the ACRB held back against the filters as a final wash. The contents of the coffee pot, around 500 milliliters, were then added back to the original pot, and the heat turned up to effect boiling of the liquid. When the volume was reduced to 300 milliliters, I transferred the tea to a smaller stainless steel pot and continued reducing the volume with vigorous boiling until a volume of around 150 milliliters was achieved. I then transferred this final tea to a coffee mug and added 2 tablespoons of honey in an attempt to improve the flavor. This tea was then put into the fridge to cool. 6 grams of Syrian rue seeds were weighed out and combined with some hazelnut ice cream. The ice cream/rue mixture was consumed. The ice cream masked the flavor sufficiently to allow direct ingestion of the rue, and a timer of 25 minutes was initiated. At the 25-minute mark, I poured myself a glass of cranberry juice, sugar-free, to act as a chaser in between swigs of the acacia tea. In the interim, I had drawn a hot bath and set up blankets and 2 pillows next to the toilet. I wore loose-fitting clothes and turned off all the lights in my abode, save for a single candle on the bathroom counter. Next to the candle, I placed my favorite stuffed animal cat. My girlfriend gave it to me and insists that it has a soul. The cat and the warm bath were intended to be my references to the corporeal world, as required during the experience. I drank around 90% of the acacia tea in 3 or 4 swigs, with a chaser of cranberry juice between each swig to cleanse the palate and calm my stomach. The final 10% I never attempted to drink, and it wasn't required for what happened next. I took note of the time, 9:50 p.m., and listened to some classic Genesis tracks, the Lamia, the musical box, attempting to get to the 25-minute mark without vomiting. Unlike my first ayahuasca attempt, I stood up this time to help mitigate any waves of nausea that were to come at me. Around 15 minutes, the room began to feel warmer, and a deeper nausea began to evanesce. Around 20 minutes, I was fighting nausea strongly and had to shut off the music to focus on not vomiting. At minute 21 or 22, I gave in to the nausea and prepared for the inevitable purge, sitting down on the blanket with my back propped against the wall with the pillows next to the toilet. However, the purge didn't come at this point. Instead, when I closed my eyes, I began to sense myself in the presence of a vast amphitheater, akin to the Imperial Senate in the newer Star Wars movies. The colors in this chamber were a futuristic combination of purple, red, gold, yellow, orange, and black, unlike any color scheme I've seen before, but possessing an ornate beauty and vibrating/scintillating. There was immediately a sense of time slowing down, and my ability to process information was heightened exponentially from my mortal form. Lights in this massive space were blinking in small green flashes, and I felt a feminine overmind was present with whatever other lesser entities dwelt there. Synesthesia effects began shortly thereafter. I was able to anticipate my words/thoughts prior to saying/having them, like a second delay on what I was about to say or think, and then the words would be stated, echoing as they exited my lips throughout my entire being. At this point I was saying, "Whoa, how beautiful," in a mantra of sorts. I also tried to sing, but the only music I was capable of was a distinctive falling whistle note. Even now when I make that whistle, it calls back strong memories of the experience. I opened my eyes to check my earthen surroundings, and noted that when staring at my hands, they changed shape and color. I would gain a 6th or 7th finger on my right hand, and when rotating my hand in space, it would morph to new and fantastic shapes that I had some degree of control over, i.e., if I didn't like the shape, I could attempt to change it with limited success. I went through cycles of closed-eye visuals, where the feminine overmind was impressing various synesthetic effects to me. Certain thoughts would cause freezing cold sensations in my feet, hands, or forehead. The air itself could be shaped and scooped like wet sands, and the texture of the toilet paper over my head varied constantly between a tangible solid and ethereal vapor. At the end of each cycle of synesthetic induction, I would find myself staring into the toilet bowl, as if summoned there by the overmind. Please purge. The curvature of which would morph with each dry heave I gave. My mind had a strong desire to vomit at each of these junctures, but as I would dry heave, my body would resist the purge strongly. The feminine overmind was undaunted by my resistance, and would cycle me through new states, out-of-body experiences, feelings of isolation and despair from the world I knew, before I would again find myself staring at the now flesh-toned toilet bowl. During one of these cycles, I remembered staring at my hands and forearms, and being able to see what I can only attribute as chakra energy coursing through my veins, my hands oftentimes appearing plasticine and opaque. Having failed to purge up to this point, the experience then changed to one of out-of-body isolation. Periodically, I would return to a pseudo-reality existing in my earthbound bathroom, run my hands through the still hot bath water, or look up briefly to make visual contact with the burning candle and soul-imbued stuffed cat watching me vicariously on the counter. Each time I felt reconnection to the world in this way, I was plunged deeper into a dissociative experience on the other side. The end result of all these experiential cycles being that I just wanted to fall asleep and hope to wake up again in reality. But even this impulse was quashed by the feminine overmind, and I was put into a state where I believed that I had truly died and moved on to an afterlife of sorts, one with eternity. Sometime around this serene/bleak moment, my body finally allowed a true purge. But I wasn't allowed in any part of Earth in reality to ensure that said purge went into the toilet. Instead, I threw up against the side of the bathtub and onto the blanket. I grabbed the plunger next to the toilet, and in a wide arc transferred it into the bathtub, and unraveled all the toilet paper from the roll. I remember grabbing the blanket at this point, and having it fall in cascading fashion as if it were a mini waterfall through my hands back to the ground. As I unraveled the toilet paper, I didn't realize that's what I was doing at the time. The sheets appeared as morphing flower petals of varying consistency falling towards me. Sometimes these flowers would spin in space to form tight helices that I would marvel at. The purge having been completed, the negativity that had been cyclically present in my being up to that point in the experience/life faded completely, and I entered a space I can only refer to as a heaven of sorts. Here I was greeted warmly by the feminine overmind, and waves of warm colors washed over my soul. It was similar in coloration to the initial entry phase, red, purple, orange, gold, but the background was a vast cloudscape in white, impressionistic in detail. Angelic beings were there that made their presence known by telepathic means. I was completely convinced of my dwelling there for the rest of eternity, and time lost all meaning. All that mattered was experiencing the warm feelings washing over my soul and shifting colors on the palette. The feeling of universal love was ever present. The final state of this experience was a serenely empty space filled with contrails of bright rainbow colors, through which I slowly drifted. In post-analysis, it was akin to the Rainbow Road racetrack from the SNES era Super Mario Kart. But while in it, I had no such thoughts, only serenity, convinced that I was one with the universe, without any trace of ego present, my mortal body cleansed away and forgotten aeons before. Sometime thereafter, I regained my corporeal consciousness, and discovered the mess that I had made in the corner of the bathroom during the chaotic purge sequence. Feeling chipper, I was quite at ease with everything, and laughed to myself to see the plunger in the now lukewarm bathwater. 4 hours had passed almost to the minute, 2:10 a.m. I cleaned up the mess and took a shower, and made an effort to remember as much of the experience as possible prior to sleeping for the night. The following day was at times ethereal, the prior night's experience having convinced my psyche that I had left my body for good to dwell in that eternal Ayahuascan realm. I appreciate so much of what transpired, and will seek to focus with even greater intent on the next journey. The night after the experience, as I lay in bed with my eyes closed, I was able to partially enter the ayahuascan realm without any assistance, which flabbergasted me as I lay in bed. If anything, the imbibing of this variant of ayahuasca has weakened the separation between the corporeal and ayahuascan world for me. Tonight being the second night post-experience, I wonder if this power I possessed last night has faded at all. Time will tell. Alright, everybody. That is the end of our story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Share with us your ayahuasca experiences down in the comments below. Check out the other videos and playlists on my channel. And I will see you in the next one, fam. Deuces.